Welcome back to our channel, soap fans. Today is a phenomenal day to dive into the most explosive, jaw-dropping drama Los Angeles has ever witnessed. Grab your favorite drink and brace yourselves, because we are unpacking a monumental bombshell that will shatter the Forrester legacy forever. The ink on the marriage certificate was not just wet. It was bleeding into the pristine paper like a fatal, unforgiving wound to John Finnegan's heart. This was not a nightmare. This was a brutal, calculated execution. Steffy Forrester Finnegan did not just leave Monaco. She fled a toxic crime scene. The romantic European getaway had devolved into a psychological bloodbath the second she discovered Sheila lounging on the Riviera sand. Finn had known. He had packed his mother's dark, twisted secret right alongside their sunscreen. He had looked his wife in the eye and lied, prioritizing the monster who nearly murdered them over the mother of his children. When Steffy violently hurled her wedding ring at Finn's chest, it was not merely a dramatic gesture. It was the detonation of their entire life together. The flight back to Los Angeles was a turbulent descent into madness. Steffy sat in the luxurious cabin of the Forrester jet, drowning her agonizing heartbreak in premium aviation bourbon. Every sip fueled a feral, unadulterated vengeance. She was done crying. She was done negotiating with a man who possessed a fatal, pathological weakness for a psychopath. By the time Steffy's heels clicked against the marble floors of the Forrester Creations building, she was no longer a grieving wife. She was a weapon of mass destruction, actively seeking a target. She pushed open the heavy oak doors of the CEO office, expecting emptiness. Instead, she found a graveyard of shattered dreams. Carter Walton sat in the dim, suffocating shadows, staring blankly at the bottom of a crystal tumbler. The brilliant, formidable Forrester COO was entirely broken. Daphne Rose was gone. The crushing, devastating weight of her premature menopause diagnosis had triggered a catastrophic spiral of guilt, driving her to walk out on the man who loved her. Carter's lifelong dream of building a family had been violently ripped away in the span of a single afternoon. He was drowning in a sea of whiskey and profound, inescapable loneliness. When Steffy walked into the room, the atmosphere shifted. Two titans of industry, both completely shattered by the unforgivable betrayals of the people they loved, collided in the darkness. There was no need for lengthy explanations. The smeared mascara and the scent of alcohol told the entire, tragic story. Carter poured another glass. Steffy took it without a word. For hours, the CEO office became a sanctuary of shared trauma. Steffy paced the floor like a caged, venomous panther, her voice echoing off the walls as she recounted the sickening betrayal on the Monaco beach. She screamed about the looming, suffocating shadow of Sheila. She raged about the terrifying vulnerability of her children. She wept for the absolute death of her trust in Finn. Carter listened, his own heart bleeding out on the executive desk. He offered the steadfast, unwavering loyalty that Finn had so catastrophically failed to provide. As the alcohol flowed, the grief began to curdle into something far more dangerous. The sorrow evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating, apocalyptic clarity. Steffy stopped pacing. She looked at the imposing, fiercely dependable man sitting before her. Carter Walton was brilliant. He was legally untouchable. He possessed a deep, historical hatred for Sheila. A sudden, terrifyingly brilliant idea ignited in Steffy's mind. She did not just want a divorce. A divorce was merely a piece of paper. A divorce was a vulnerability. She wanted an impenetrable fortress. She wanted a legal shield forged in titanium. She wanted to strike a fatal, irreversible blow to Finn's ego and Sheila's twisted ambitions. Steffy set her glass down. Her eyes locked onto Carter with a predatory, unyielding focus. She dropped the ultimate seismic bombshell. "Marry me, tonight." The words hung in the heavy air, vibrating with absolute, undeniable power. Carter froze, the whiskey burning a fiery trail down his throat. This was not a proposal born of sweeping romance or lingering affection. This was a tactical, ruthless military strike. Steffy meticulously laid out her vision. She needed a husband who would act as an absolute barrier. She needed the formidable legal prowess of the Forrester COO to permanently block Finn and Sheila from her life. Carter's mind raced. He had just lost his future with Daphne. He was staring down the barrel of an empty, agonizingly lonely existence. Steffy was offering him a family. She was offering him a purpose. She was offering him the ultimate position of trust and authority within the Forrester dynasty. In a moment of profound vulnerability and desperate, shared vengeance, Carter made a fateful, world-altering decision. He looked at the fierce, broken queen standing before him. He nodded. The dark, unforgiving pact was sealed. Carter's legal brilliance went to work immediately. Within hours, the necessary documents were drafted, expedited, and resting on the massive executive desk. Across the city, John Finnegan was a man running out of oxygen. His desperate flight from Nice had just touched down at LAX. Finn was frantic, breathless, his mind racing with 1,000 pathetic, rehearsed apologies. He knew his silence about Sheila was a catastrophic error, but he still foolishly believed in the resilience of his marriage. He bypassed security, ignored the speed limits, and raced his car toward the Forrester Creations building like a man fleeing a burning building. He sprinted down the legendary, dimly lit corridors, his heart pounding violently against his ribs. He reached the heavy doors of the CEO office, fully expecting to find a tearful wife ready to negotiate a truce. Finn pushed the doors open. The apologies instantly died in his throat. The oxygen was violently sucked from the room. The scene that greeted him was not a tearful reunion. It was a cold-blooded execution. Steffy and Carter stood shoulder to shoulder behind the desk. Between them rested a freshly printed, legally binding marriage certificate. Carter held the pen. Steffy's signature was already drying on the pristine white paper. Finn froze in the doorway, his eyes darting frantically from the document to Carter, and finally to the icy, unyielding gaze of the woman he loved. He stepped forward, his voice trembling, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He begged for an explanation. He pleaded for her to stop. He screamed that this was a mistake. But Steffy's gaze was entirely devoid of warmth. It was a terrifying, unforgiving glacier. She did not yell. She did not scream. Her voice was terrifyingly calm, slicing through the agonizing tension like a surgical scalpel. She looked Finn dead in the eye and delivered the fatal, soul-crushing blow. "You are no longer my husband." The words echoed off the walls, sealing Finn's doom. He staggered backward as if physically struck by a freight train. Steffy continued her ruthless, systematic verbal assault. She declared that Carter Walton was now the only man on earth she trusted to protect her family. Carter stood tall, his imposing figure serving as a literal and metaphorical barrier between Steffy and the man who had so catastrophically failed her. Steffy meticulously outlined the terrifying new reality. This sudden marriage was her ultimate legal fortress. As the wife of the Forrester COO, her power was now absolute and unquestionable. Finn was not just out of her bed. He was permanently ousted from her life, exiled from her company, and legally banned from coming anywhere near her children. The psychological warfare was absolute. Finn was left standing in the smoking ruins of his entire existence, realizing with sickening clarity that he had been entirely outmaneuvered. The drama reached an explosive, boiling point as the office doors swung open once more. Ridge Forrester stormed into the room, a hurricane of patriarchal fury. Ridge had already heard the horrific, infuriating details of the Monaco disaster. His hatred for Finn's weakness had been simmering at a highly dangerous temperature. He took in the chaotic scene. Finn pleading pathetically, Carter standing firm, Steffy radiating unyielding power, and the marriage certificate resting on the desk. Finn looked to Ridge for mercy, desperately hoping for a lifeline from his father-in-law. But Ridge's face hardened into impenetrable stone. The legendary dressmaker did not offer a shred of sympathy. He offered a brutal, finalized verdict. Ridge publicly and aggressively endorsed Carter. He declared Carter to be a worthy, honorable, fiercely protective replacement for a man who had foolishly brought a psychopath back into their orbit. Ridge's booming voice sealed Finn's ultimate fate. The Forrester family had officially closed ranks. Finn was entirely, unequivocally exiled from the kingdom. But the true, terrifying genius of Steffy's ruthless maneuver extended far beyond the walls of Forrester Creations. This sudden, shocking marriage was a definitive death sentence for Sheila's twisted, predatory dreams. In the dark, grimy corners of Los Angeles, Sheila was waiting for her golden opening. She foolishly believed the Monaco disaster was her ultimate ticket back into the fold. She believed the severe fracture in Steffy and Finn's marriage would finally allow her to slither back into her son's life and claim her precious grandson. But news travels with terrifying speed in this town. When the seismic shockwave of Steffy and Carter's sudden union hit the streets, Sheila's wicked, triumphant smile instantly vanished. The realization hit the infamous villain like a runaway freight train. Steffy had not just locked the door. She had constructed an impenetrable, heavily guarded vault. Carter Walton despised Sheila with every fiber of his being. He was a formidable, legally savvy powerhouse who would never, under any circumstances, allow her within 100 miles of the Forrester estate. Sheila was left frantic, screaming in the shadows, clawing desperately at the walls of her own making. Her brilliant master plan had been completely, utterly obliterated by Steffy's vindictive strike. Back in the CO office, the dust finally settled. Finn was unceremoniously escorted out by security, a broken, defeated, entirely shattered man. Ridge offered a solemn, approving nod to the newlyweds before turning on his heel and leaving them alone in the quiet aftermath of the storm. Steffy turned to Carter. There were absolutely no illusions about what they had just done. It was a marriage forged in the intense fires of betrayal and cemented by a mutual, desperate need for survival. But as Steffy looked down at the finalized marriage certificate, a slow, triumphant, chillingly beautiful smile spread across her face. She had won. She had successfully protected her children from a looming nightmare. She had completely eviscerated the man who had dared to lie to her, and she had definitively checkmated the most dangerous, unpredictable woman in Los Angeles. Steffy Forrester was back on the throne, and she was taking absolutely no prisoners.